Hi everyone, today I'm looking at the SMC Super Takumar 35mm f2 made by Asahi Pentax. This is a vintage lens. I love looking at vintage lenses because they're inexpensive, well built, and sometimes can surprise you with their build quality and optics. Today's mirrorless cameras are exceptionally good at adapting these types of lenses with adapters for almost every mount. In my case, I am adapting M42 mount lenses to my Fujifilm XT3 via this Pixco M42 to FX focal reducer. Yes, this is a focal reducer and it will add another glass element to the mix. However, you will get to experience the lens in its true focal length and aperture settings on the APS-C camera. For the sake of this video, I will be disregarding the effects of these focal reducers in order to concentrate on the lens itself. So all of the M42 lenses are fully manual, so you would not be able to use out of focus nor get any information from the lens. The Fujifilm XT3 includes many manual focus assist modes that can make it easy to focus using these lenses. In fact, I find the photography experience to be much more rewarding using manual lenses, as I'm forced to take my time and manually target my subject, which in turn forces me to think about my composition as well. So let's take a look how this lens performs in the sharpness test. Here it is at f2 and it is hardly usable. In fact, I would say it's not usable at all. It is much too soft in the center and you do get a little bit of fringing already, and the corners are even worse, so forget it. Not very good at all here. At f2.8, the corners remain blurry. The center, it sees some improvement, but it is still blurry. At f4, we have barely usable center now, while the corners still remain a bit blurry. At f5.6, it seems the lens is finally usable, which is where I was shooting it most of the time. The corners, however, still remain somewhat blurry and not usable, but a little bit of improvements over the previous ones, however. And at f8, we see somewhat the same level of sharpness throughout, and the lens remains this sharp in the center, while the corners actually get slightly better at f11, and then finally at f16 it is where the lens is the most sharp. The corners are a lot more clear, although not incredibly sharp, and the center is also a lot more sharp. So if you want to use this lens at all, you would definitely have to stop it down to at least f5.6. But f8 or f11 for more corner to corner sharpness. I give this lens a 2 out of 5 in sharpness, as it is very disappointing not to be able to use the lens stop down at f2 for that subject separation. Even at f5.6, the corners are not very good. So I would definitely stop down if you're going to be using this lens. Now let's take a look at distortion and vignetting. So here we see barrel distortion throughout its aperture actually, and we see a lot of vignetting as well. As you see in the corners, it gets a lot darker. If we stop down to f2.8, some of the vignetting goes away, but the distortion remains. At f4, some of that vignetting goes away even further. Distortion stays the same. At f5.6, finally the image is looking like the vignetting has gone away, and so it remains like that for the rest of the image all the way to f16. The distortion doesn't really go away if you stop down, although the vignetting does get removed once you hit f5.6. So I would say in distortion, I would give it 2 out of 5, as we do see that barrel distortion throughout its aperture settings. And for the vignetting, I would give it 3 out of 5, as it does get removed. However, you do have to stop down in order to remove it. So let's take a look at chromatic aberrations. This is actually pretty bad, and I would say where the lens performs its worst. So if you take a look at this image here, this flower was supposed to be a red/pink color, but you start seeing a blue into the mix, and it starts creating this purple tone. If you take a look at the edges inside, then you see the obvious blue fringing happening. This was actually really bad, and I couldn't use any pictures like this. By the way, this is also at f2, and that's where the fringing was also the worst. If we take a look at this picture here, these are some murals by the mountains that I saw. There's actually a lot of fringing happening, which is actually making the image less sharp. Let's take a look at this pole here on the left. So you usually will see the orange on the left and then the blue fringing on the right. And that was the pattern I was seeing, and it's actually making the edges less sharp. If we take a look at the head of the mule here, you see a big blue line. This is really bad. In general, the fringing was very bad. I would say it's awful. I would give it a 1 out of 5 here, just because it's making the image less sharp, and it's actually some of the worst purple fringing that I've seen in a while. Let's take a look at lens flaring now. So this is actually pretty good here. The lens was yielding a very nice lens flare with nice shapes. I didn't have any problems when shooting into bright sunlight, and in fact I wasn't even thinking about it, so that's how good it was. I would give it a pretty good rating here. I would give it a 5 out of 5. Alright, so we did a lot of pixel peeping, and we started seeing where the lens falls short and other places where the lens comes ahead of other lenses. But what's my overall UX on this lens? And when I talk about the user experience of the lens, what I mean is the real world usability of the sharpness level of the bokeh and how close you can focus to a subject. So first, let me talk about the bokeh. I'm going to give this lens a pretty good rating on the bokeh just because it's not bad at all. I would give it a 4 out of 5. It really does melt it away, and it looks gorgeous. For usability on the sharpness, I would give this lens a 2 out of 5 because I really wish it had that edge-to-edge sharpness. As you see here, all the bushes are blurry, and that's what I was seeing at f5.6. I think I need to turn this down a little bit more. For example, here on the rocks, if you zoom in, then they get blurry. And then finally, the usability on the focus distance, meaning my distance from the lens to the subject. This wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. I would give it right in the middle here, 2 out of 5. You're gonna be able to get about a foot and a half away from your subject. This wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. You can still fake some macro shots if you crop in. So on to the price. So the Pentax, it's pretty affordable for the quality that you get, but there are other lenses in the market that are very competitive against it. For example, you can get the Zonlai 22mm, which is a great lens. It pretty much outperforms the Asahi Pentax in every aspect. So I would strongly consider that one over the Asahi Pentax. If you do want to stick to a vintage lens, you can go with the Carl Zeiss Jenna 35mm f2.4. I haven't used that lens, but if you want a vintage, that's something I would definitely check out before buying this Pentax. Now, if you're looking for any kind of 35mm, even a modern lens, then I would strongly recommend either the Fujinon 23 f2 or the Fujinon 23 f1.4 if you don't mind spending the $900 for that. The f2 might be just fine for what you're looking for, but if you have and you don't mind spending that much, then the 23mm f1.4 should be the best lens around here. As far as my recommendation, and keeping in mind the budget and also not minding manual lenses, I strongly recommend checking out the Zonlai and then the Jenna before going to the Asahi Pentax. So my overall score for this lens is a 2.65 out of 5. The things to watch out here for are the chromatic aberrations, and overall the lens scored fairly low in sharpness and distortion. What's very good on this lens is the lens flaring. It actually has fairly controlled lens flaring, and the bokeh is actually very nice. However, for the price, it is too expensive, especially with lenses like the Zonlai or some of the newer lenses coming out of China, it is hard to recommend it right now when those lenses are performing better in almost every aspect. So I would say save your money and either go for the Sunlight or the Jenna before checking out this lens. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you disagree with any of my ratings on this lens, or maybe if you found that this lens was actually sharper than I rated it, or some other aspect. Put your comments down below. I'll be happy to read what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll leave you guys with some more pictures that I took with this lens. Thank you. I'll see you next time.